All right, well, just to be mindful of our time, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar session. My name is Fernando and I come with the Region 9 Head Start Association, and I'm excited to be your webinar host today. So feel free to contact me via the chat box with any questions you have regarding audio connection or anything else. I'm here to support you behind the scenes. Please note that as a registered attendee to this session, you'll be able to exit and re-enter the session, which sometimes helps to fix any of those connection issues you might experience. Today's session will be recorded and will be made available within 24 to 48 hours, so you can watch it on demand. You may find a copy of this recording once we finish editing it up on our website, a link to the events page where you registered. We will also be linking the recording up on our YouTube channel, which can be accessed by going to our website as well. Participants will be able to download a certificate of participation after the call by visiting our website and just go to that events page again to where you registered, and you will find a PDF to download and track your professional development hours. Now, I'll pass it along to Edward Condon for a few opening comments, and I hope you enjoy the session. Take it away, Ed.
Great, thanks Fernando, and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to our Pennywise webinar this afternoon. I'm so pleased that you've taken the time to join us. You know, in Head Start, we not only work on children's literacy, family health, but we also worry about economic wellness, if you will, the wellness of yourselves and the families that you serve. Our partnership here with the Retirement Benefits Group, George Fraser, and OneAmerica brings us this webinar today from Pete the Planner with two intentions. The first, to really support you as you look toward your financial options, whether that's retirement in the short term or for financial planning for your family, but also to equip you with information and resources as you work with families. We know that Head Start is a multi-generational program you're encountering now as we reach out in the virtual zone with grandmas and grandpas. We're reaching out to aunts and uncles, and of course with parents and doing the work that we do with children. So today's webinar is to give you information, resources that is both useful to you as well as useful to the families you serve. So with that, I want to introduce you to George Fraser, who is our sponsor along with OneAmerica. George, give us a few words and kick us off.
Thanks so much, Ed. And it's always a pleasure to be with Head Start. And to first of all, thank all of you for the amazing work you do with the future of this country, our kids. And I am so proud to be working with you and certainly to be sharing today. You know, this is an interesting time for all of us with the COVID issue that we've been dealing with. We're all living a little bit different lives. And many of us are thinking about, are we going to be able to make it and prepare for that retirement we need? So I'm going to remind you of a couple of things that we've chatted about in the past. And I just want to start with a quote that you've all heard before. Most people don't plan to fail. They just simply fail to plan. So what I'm going to ask of you today is that you start reassessing your plan and to make sure you are on track so that when it comes time to say, hang up the hat and get out and start your retirement life, you're ready. So the very first thing that I want you to do is to remember this website. It's www.ssa.gov. And the reason I want you to do that is I want you to log on and I want you to find out exactly what you're going to be receiving from Social Security. Most of us don't realize that even $1,000 a month equates to $250,000 in income between age 65 and 85. Most of us don't have that amount in our 403B or 401k Head Start Run plan today. But it's an important number. There's about 500 different ways to take that money, and about 73% of people leave money on the table and they don't take it in an appropriate fashion. So that's the first thing I want you to do. Log on to that as soon as you get off this webcast and consider exactly what you have. If you need help in getting on, my phone number and my team's phone numbers will be available to help you with that. And then the second thing I need you to do is go back to the person who is handling your retirement plan today at Head Start and ask for a personal meeting with the financial advisor associated with the plan. You need to find out exactly, make sure that you are in the right place today. If that doesn't work for you, call us. We're happy to be there for you. And the last thing, we would love to work with every Head Start in Region 9. Our business has been pretty unique in that we're working with a few of the different Head Starts now. We've been able to lower the cost and increase the personal service that's available through my group and with OneAmerica. And so it's been rather successful. We're really proud of that work that we're doing. So if you have an interest in it, please reach out to your human resource director and your executive director. Ask them to give me a call or invite me to call them, and we'll talk about how we can perhaps make your plan to be more successful so that at the end of the day, you folks are all more successful and can enjoy the retirement you deserve. Today we have Pete the Planner, who is just gives you lots of great ideas for things that can happen today. So with that, Pete, I'm gonna turn it over to you. And again, thanks for allowing us to be part of your lives and to help change the direction in which your retirement can move forward.
Thank you so much, George. Hey, it's good to be with all of you once again. As we talk about our financial lives, I know sometimes talking about our financial lives isn't exactly fun. And I know sometimes talking about our financial lives brings on a lot of anxiety. I'll tell you this, the first thing that I did this morning, regretfully, is I read an article that I should not have read at the wrong time of day, and it brought me financial anxiety through the day. And I think one of the challenges that every single one of us deals with is making sure that doesn't happen to us at the wrong time of day. And so what we're going to deal with today is creating stability. We talked about it a little last time we were here together. Now, I want this to be as interactive as possible, so I got to test how your fingers and how the chat box is working right now. So it is fall here in central Indiana where I live, which means a couple different things. It means pumpkin spice lattes, which I don't actually enjoy that much. It means football. It means chili. When you think of fall, I want to know in the chat box, go ahead and put it right there. What does fall mean to you when the seasons change? What does fall mean to you? Put it in the chat box, and let's see how you're feeling about these things. All right. Soup, yes. Cool weather, cooler weather. It was weird. It was 80 degrees here this weekend, and it's 50 degrees today. I guess that is the Midwest. Sweaters. I'm a big sweater guy. Tranquility. Oh, that was peaceful. You know what? We're officially adopting that as the vibe of this event here today is tranquility. Now, I'm not one that really elicits the feeling of tranquility, but that's going to be the vibe for the whole event. Holiday stress. Oh, I just brought you down. Sorry about that. All right, perfect. So the chat box works. You're awake. We're ready to go. Tranquility is the vibe. Everybody feel it? Here's what we're working on today as we reach toward stability. We're going to do a SWOT analysis. Now, some of you are thinking, a SWOT, he called the SWOT team. No, we're going to walk through the different strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats in your personal finances. Businesses go through this sort of analysis all the time. Today, well, we're going to do it together. Now, I'm going to encourage you today to participate as much as you're comfortable. We're going to ask you what your financial strengths are. Not yet, but we will in a little bit. And if you want to share those as a feeling of community in the chat box, please do. Of course, I'm also going to ask if you'd be willing to share some of what your weaknesses are as well. Now, I just did notice people in Guam don't experience all the seasons. I just see that in the chat box. They all have tropical weather all year long. Now, as a fair-skinned person who has no hair to protect their head from the sun, I'd either be inside all the time in Guam or be glad that I live in the Midwest. Next, we're going to focus on the keystone of our financial life. Well, what in the world is a keystone? As it relates to your finances, your keystone is the one thing that if we're able to make a change, improve that moment, then the rest of your financial destiny changes. So we will help you identify what's the one thing holding you back in your financial journey. And then finally, we're going to talk about the meeting. We are going to encourage you to take some of this information that you have today. Once you've identified your strengths, your weaknesses, and the opportunities and threats in your financial life, we're going to have you then take the one thing that, if changed, will impact your financial life greatly. And we're going to have you take it to your personal finance committee. Well, who's on that committee? Could just be you. Could be you and a significant other. Could be you and a dear friend and accountability partner. Could be your financial advisor. So we'll do that next. Now we have to make sure that we're keeping stability at the forefront here, because it has been my experience in the last 20 years of doing this that several well-meaning, well-intentioned people tend to confuse the concept of stability with comfort in lifestyle. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say it was normal times. Oh, that's a nice feeling, isn't it? To just sit back and for a moment forget all the chaos going on. And you pick the year. It's not 2020, but you pick the year. It's normal times. People are employed and at work, and we're shaking hands. We're even touching each other's faces and breathing on each other. It's fantastic, right? I never forget. You never remember how much you're like breathing on folks until you can't breathe on people. Anyway, so think about those times and think about how your financial life is going during those times. Most people don't actually seek out stability during good times. They just want to know that everything's okay if things keep going well, right? That is to say, if your rent payment or your mortgage payment doesn't stress you out, if you can afford your car payment, if you can go out to eat every once in a while, even go on a vacation and make some memories with your family, that's good enough. And I'm not here to steal that joy and to tell you it's not good enough. But what I am here to share with you is that sometimes it becomes a distraction, that we only seek that comfort and we don't actually seek the stability that's important. A bad analogy for this is it's not always comfortable to wear your seatbelt, whether you're on a plane or a train or a car for that matter. But it's the right thing to do. And when you get to your final destination, especially if you're in a car and you're not wearing a seatbelt, you don't celebrate the fact that you made it without your seatbelt and that you were justified in not wearing it. In fact, it was a mistake to not wear your seatbelt the entire time because it just doesn't make sense. What we've learned more than anything in the last 6 to 7 months is that sometimes people justify retroactively their decisions based on the fact that, well, nothing bad happened, so we're fine. Well, guess what's happened in the last 6 or 7 months? Something bad has happened to a lot of people, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of Americans. And so as we discussed the last few times we're together, and I definitely want to reset it now, there are 3 groups of Americans. There are 3 groups of people on this call, right? There are people who've been greatly impacted financially by COVID-19 and the recession. That's about 20 to 25% of Americans have been affected by COVID-19 greatly from a financial perspective. Then there's the group 2. Group 2 are people who've not been impacted financially that bad or they don't have a lot of stability anyway, right? So that's to say things are kind of okay, but if things got bad, they'd get real bad real fast because there's not that stability. There's not that seatbelt to secure you. And finally, there's group 3, which is only about 10% of Americans. Those are people who have not been greatly impacted by what's going on. And on top of that, they do have stability. So they'll be able to deal with some trouble if it is still on the horizon. My goal for you as we work through this today, I think it's very important for you to self-identify in one of those 3 groups. And please remember, just because your income may have not changed, that doesn't mean your significant other who you share finances with, doesn't mean their income hasn't changed. So if your household income has changed by 25% or more in the last 6 or 7 months, you're very likely in that first group. If nothing really bad has happened, but you're pretty sure if something did, you'd be in trouble bad, you're in group 2. And frankly, if you're in group 3, you know you're in group 3. You're fine financially now, and you'll be fine financially for a while based on the level of stability you have. So that is to say, as we work through this today, the end result is this. At the end, I'm going to tell you to have a meeting, and I'm going to tell you what to talk about in your financial lives. Have a committee meeting with your financial committee, all right? The goal is stability. That is the goal. So let's get after it. All right. The good old SWOT analysis. I feel like I'm back in college. Of course, I was a little lighter in college and I had hair. So I guess we're not like we're back in college, but we're going to take some time to examine your household finances. And we're going to look at what's going well, strengths. We're going to look at what's not going well, weaknesses. We're going to take a look at what could go well, opportunities. And then we're going to take a look at what could go badly, poorly, wrong. That's right. Those are the threats. So let's begin with financial strengths. Let me give you some examples of financial strengths that may be going on in your life, and then I'd love to see it in the chat box. So here's some financial strengths. Low cost of living. Maybe you don't live too high on the hog, as they say here in the Midwest, right? Maybe it doesn't take a lot of money for you to exist. That's a very good, positive thing. Maybe you've got steady income, whether it's from you or your significant other or both, very steady income and job. Maybe you've got a full emergency fund. That is a fantastic strength. Maybe you have additional income opportunities in your household. Maybe someone has a second form of employment or a variable income source that adds bonuses or commissions or something like that. Or maybe you've already done a great job preparing for what will be the next stage of your life eventually, which is retirement. So let's see it in the chat box. Let's exude. Oh, that's a good one to start. Mortgage paid. I love that. If you mean your mortgage is paid off, I love it. And if you mean, hey, you're able to pay your mortgage on a monthly basis, I love that too. So let's see them. Let's exude positivity. What is going well right now in your financial life? Now, I have to admit, if you happen to be in group one, which are people who, have been greatly impacted by the recession and COVID-19, sometimes it is hard to find the positivity in all of this. All right, there's some good stuff. Stable income. Sometimes when you know what you're working with, when your income is stable, that's all you need to create some momentum. Monthly family money meetings. Oh my gosh, I love that. No credit card debt. I like that too. I think sometimes it's really easy to let your credit card debt get away from you because you don't set it as a goal to not use the credit card. Very easily in tough times do we use that credit card as our emergency fund, and then it begins to spiral out of control. Being able to buy what I want. That's a good example of the comfort thing we were just talking about right now, right? And I'm not saying it's not a positive nature of your life. In fact, it does feel really good to be able to buy what you want. What I want to make sure that you're doing specifically for the person that said that is, I want to make sure that we're turning that feeling of being able to buy what you want into actual measurable stability. Excellent job though. Pay bills on time. Don't sleep on that. 35% of your credit score is simply based on paying your bills on time. So if you aren't currently paying your bills on time or you haven't been over the last 6 months, once you go 6 months in a row of not missing payments, not being late, your credit score improves greatly. So if you're in the position where you're already paying bills on time, that is a positive. I love that. By the way, thank you all for giving me energy right now. Nothing makes me feel better than reading all the positive outlooks that you have about your financial lives. It's great. Pay cash for what you need. Consider what you want before purchasing it. What's positive about that is it's just a mindset. It's your household standard. People often say things like, well, my grandma always told me, my grandpa always told me, and it becomes that sort of personal standard or that philosophy. I think financially you can have the same thing. Saving extra money due to working from home. Olivia, I see that's your name who put that there. Boy, you are right. The average American has changed their spending somewhere between $250 to $750 a month just because of our collective change of lifestyle. You look at how we've changed our dining habits, how we've changed our online purchasing habits, our shopping habits, also, and by the way, our fuel consumption and those sorts of things. That is absolutely a positive. And I really like it. And here's a really good one too. Share finances with my partner. Gives me an opportunity to save. It is helpful. Sometimes it is much more expensive to have two households than it is to have one household. It's especially true if you're working together and you can leverage each other's income to handle each other's bills. All right, so I want you to keep these things in mind. Whatever you just self-identified as your biggest strength, I need you to hold on to it. Okay, set it to the back of your head for a second, and hopefully you have identified that as your number one strength. Some of us are going to have more than one strength, and that's great. But I need you to think of what is your most powerful thing. Okay, so set it aside because that is your most versatile tool. Because I'm going to come at you with something a little different now. Now we need to take a deep breath, step back, and identify what's currently not going so well. I do want to warn you before you start putting stuff in the chat, other people can see it. And look, I think we're all choosing to trust each other so we can show each other support to get people the help they need. But if you've got something that's not going so great right now and you want to put it whatever level of privacy you want within the chat, go ahead and put it. And there's no shame in that game of what is possibly not going the way you want it to go right now. So go ahead and enter that into the chat and let's see. All right. Health costs, spouses' health costs, absolutely something to be concerned about. Not only their health themselves, but then there's the financial ramifications of that. Thank you for sharing that. And I hope your spouse starts to feel better. Rent going up, dental bills, student loans. Hey, Veronica, we're going to talk student loans quite a bit here in a few minutes because I know what an impact that can have on a well-meaning person's life. So we'll definitely hit that here in just a second. I did just have a question pop up. Oh, so someone's, I guess people are entering also more private things in the cute question and answer box. You can do that too. It'll keep me guessing on a couple of monitors here. Increased utility payments, absolutely. Low pay into the household, I can understand. The dental bills seem to be stacking up here. High PG&E bills, I feel you there. Okay, so oftentimes, here's what happens. When you have a weakness and you're able to come up with it very quickly, that financial weakness sits at the front of your mind and it becomes an impediment. It becomes a roadblock to your financial growth. And a little bit, when we talk about what problem do you have to solve to be able to move on with your financial life, it is very, very, very possible that the one thing that you typed first is the one thing that you and I have to focus all of our financial brain power and energy on, right? Because if you don't know what problems you're trying to solve, if they seem so vast, if you're like me and you're constantly bothered by what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the market from time to time, what's going on politically, what's going on with race in our country. If you're constantly bothered, sometimes things feel so overwhelming that you don't even know where to begin. But from a financial perspective, as far as you and I are related, and as far as you and I are concerned, is that this one thing you just mentioned is what you and I are likely to try to solve for you. All right, how about opportunities? What could go well, right? What could happen in the next 6 to 12 months, and not a dream per se, but something that has a legitimate chance. If I may, I'm going to plant this one in your mind. Maybe it's simply a tax refund that comes early next year. Maybe you're the sort of household that always depends on the tax refund to save you. Now, I have thoughts on that altogether, but what is happening here in the next few months that could provide some opportunity for you? I'll give you another idea here too, is as we often head into the holidays and we start thinking about the end of the year holidays in October, people start to get excited. They start to spend money. They spend money on Halloween, on Thanksgiving, and then all the December holidays so you start to feel out of control starting in October as it relates to spending on food and parties and gifts and everything else. So I'm curious, is this not an opportunity to maybe change some bad financial habits that you've had around the holidays for the last several years? Maybe have a conversation with your extended family and say, hey, financially Christmas or whatever holiday you celebrate has not made a lot of sense as how we gift to each other. Maybe it's a time to reevaluate that. All right, I do see some coming in. So what are the opportunities? Holiday shopping early, starting a budget and sticking to it, mapping it out where you're going to get there and keep track of it. As it relates to holiday spending, I have to tell you, one of my favorite cathartic things to do is that we love around our house, this may not surprise you, is to set a budget for the holidays. And then once you come up with the dollar amount of what you're going to spend on the holidays, right off the top, you take travel and food and whatever you spend on activities off the top, right? Take that out. So then you've got your gift giving category. You've got your gift giving budget. The next best part is then to write down everyone you're going to buy for in your household, and then write a dollar amount next to their name to say how much you're going to spend on that person. Now, I know this sounds incredibly rude, right? You're like, oh, my kid, I'm $50, my other kid, $50, my mother-in-law, $10, whatever, right? You get to kind of choose through it. I think that's a very helpful activity as it relates to your finances. Again, here's another great comment: not buying so many presents for birthdays and holidays. I think this is one of those problems / opportunities that people are going to look at going forward and to say, when things were comfortable, when we were comfortable with our lifestyle, we had no problem spending too much around the holidays because it became a tradition. It became a habit. I think you have the opportunity to reset that going forward. Homemade presents are an absolute opportunity. I'm curious, just in the chat, how many people view tax season, right? How many people view the ability to get a tax refund early next year as an opportunity? Just put it in the chat. You know what no one mentioned, as far as I can see here, sometimes it goes pretty fast. And this is interesting for most of us going forward, is there is still a slight possibility that Congress comes together and spits out another stimulus bill, which would mean another round of direct stimulus payments. Now, I wouldn't list that as a strength for you because there's no guarantee that it's going to happen. But theoretically, if you're a family of 4 who all 4 qualify for stimulus payments, that's another $3,400 that potentially could be coming into your house in the next couple months if Congress can get its act together and agree that that is a good idea. So if you can't think of what an opportunity looks like, whether it's changing your holiday spending or wait until tax time, please understand that you can always list something like a potential stimulus payment for that. It's a great point, Lakeisha. A lot of people are going to look for that check to help with bills. It's also important to know there is one additional provision going on right now that you may not need this little tidbit of advice, but if you pass it on to someone that you care about in case they need it, I think it'd be great. There is an eviction moratorium in our country right now that simply states that a landlord cannot evict a renter, a tenant, who is currently struggling financially due to COVID-19, okay? So all a person has to do to qualify for that is to go to the CDC website. You go to the CDC website, you download what's called a declaration, and you present it to your landlord, or the person who can't pay their rent presents it to their landlord and says, essentially by decree of the US government, because I've validated the fact that I've been greatly impacted by COVID-19 financially, I'm going to be unable to pay rent. And that eviction moratorium lasts till the end of 2020. So December 31st, you've got that little sense of relief. So maybe that is an opportunity going forward to seek a little relief. And I do want to note a couple things, not to get too into the weeds here, but I think it's important you understand this. You can still get evicted for other things. You just can't get evicted for not paying. Also, your back rent is eventually due in 2021, early in 2021. The reality is this: in the next couple days, rent's due, right? So it's a new month once again. So if that serves someone that you serve or someone you care about or you yourself, just know that's possible. Just go to the CDC website and download that. Someone did mention, I don't count the stimulus payment. That is counting the chickens before the eggs hatch. Oh, I'm with you there. Believe me, I don't like counting my chickens before they hatch. However, it is very important as we're looking at what are financial opportunities to understand that every financial opportunity, more or less, is a chicken that has not hatched. And so we're not relying on those opportunities, but we're saying what is possible. Okay, finally, threats. What is potentially coming down the road for you that could affect your finances in the coming 6 to 12 months? Now, this is sort of a dark exercise right here, and I pre-apologize for putting you through it, but I think it's important just to get it out on the table of what could go wrong. Moving my wedding. Well, first of all, congratulations on your marriage, and I'm sorry that you may have to move your wedding. I'm sure that's heart-wrenching, and I'm sorry, but pre-congratulations, and I'm excited for you whenever that day does happen. More closures. Michelle, I have to tell you, as I think about what threats affect all of our financial lives, I think more closures is near the top of my list. If fall and winter heat up as it relates to more people getting infected, shutting the economy back down is certainly a threat to all of us. Program losing funding. I could lose my job and my stable income. That is a really good point, and it's a really good thing to bring up. It's a threat, and here's why I think it's important to bring up. Because what we're doing is we're acknowledging that it's a possibility if things go really bad. And you don't have to keep that at the front of your brain, but you've at least paid it service. You've said, all right, this is possible. And hopefully what the threats do is they allow you to leverage the strengths in your financial life to try to prevent those threats from affecting you. That's ultimately how all of this works. Whatever you identified as your strengths, you use to take care of the threats, right? We know what your weaknesses are. Your weaknesses are going to help you create stability by fixing them. But ultimately, it's your strengths that are going to help prevent those threats from ruining whatever is going on. Caring for ill family, absolutely. I think for a lot of us, that is almost always a financial threat. We already moved, but thank you. I'm moving to my house and my wedding will be early next year. Okay, back to the wedding stuff. Pete the planner, what you guys don't know has nothing to do with financial planning. It's Pete the wedding planner. I'm literally here to celebrate your nuptials with you. Okay, so when we talk about stability, it's really important we identify what it is we're actually trying to accomplish. I think it's really easy to lose sight of what stability means. If you joined us the last time we did this, we talked a lot about stability and identified 10 factors for you that says you are stable or you are unstable. So I'm curious right now, as we're all back here together today, what is it that to you signifies that you are financially stable? So in the chat box right now, when I say, what is it we're trying to accomplish? What I want you to type is, what do you need to do to be financially stable? What factor in your life signifies financial stability, right? So go ahead and put it in the chat box right now. Let's take a look at what you have as what is it to be financially stable? Save more money. I love that. I love that. I love it, but you know what I would love more? If we could quantify, if we could put a number to the word more. More just means, hey, $1 more. I'm not trying to be cute here or flippant. What I'm saying is it's very helpful to say, save 2 times my monthly income in terms of a savings account. It's better to quantify it. Budgeting constantly, okay? Saving towards owning a home. I like that. 3 months salary, there you go. To buy a house. It's interesting. Stability and housing really do go hand in hand. People often, though, cross the line when they think about housing stability. Buying a home solves some problems, but oftentimes it creates a whole other category of problems. Here's the phrase that I like to walk around with. If you cannot, did everybody hear my doorbell? Everybody hear that? I am out of my home office, and I do have 2 small children, so their friends are probably coming over to play at a distance outside with masks on, with hand sanitizer. Oftentimes, this is the phrase I walk around with when it comes to housing, okay? It's this. If you can't afford to fix the house you live in, you can't afford to own that home, right? If I can't fix my air conditioner that breaks, I probably should not be a homeowner. And that's not a defeating comment. I don't want you to feel like this is a haves or have-nots. It's just practical. Let's say I'm renting my home and my air conditioner breaks. It's my landlord's problem, and I just go on paying rent. And by the way, under this hypothetical, I have no savings account, so that's a good thing that that guy or that lady is taking care of that repair. Now, if I do own the home and my air conditioner breaks, I have to pay for it. I think too often we go past that point when we talk about stability and housing. Other things, cooking more, right? So to be stable, and this person, Maria's estimation is to say, I'm not going to spend as much money on dining out. I'm going to spend money cooking at home. And by the way, that ends up saving money. All right, so let me give you my best guesses as what objective financial stability looks like. Solid income. Well, what is solid income? Solid income to me means fixed income. You know how in our country, sometimes you hear media reports or maybe you hear politicians talk about people on a fixed income. And sometimes it gets confused as to what that actually means. Being on a fixed income isn't necessarily a bad thing. I would argue in some instances, it simply makes it easier to budget your money. Where being on a variable income is very difficult are in times like this, where you count on bonuses or overtime or commissions or some other variable compensation to survive and to run your lifestyle. And if our economy is in a recession, people who are on a variable income are really struggling right now. Now, you may not be on a variable income through Head Start. You understand that, but some of you certainly have a significant other who has a variable compensation model, and those wages are down, which is what either puts you in group 1 or arguably puts you in group 2. So that's number 1, solid income. If you're on a fixed income in this environment, it's actually a pretty good thing. Next up, robust savings. I just like the word robust. I don't know why. In an ideal world, here's what I want you working towards. And by the way, what I'm about to say could freak you out and you could completely dismiss it and not be interested in talking about it anymore, but I'm interested in it. I want you to have 3 months expenses in a savings account. I understand how hard that is. Oh, I absolutely understand how hard that is to accomplish, but it's not all or nothing here. Right? I think oftentimes what people do, whether we're in a recession or not, is they say, oh, I want $1,000. I want $1,000 in my savings account. And by the way, $1,000 is a lot of money, and it may be a tremendous amount of money to you. And I think that's great that you're hitting that goal, but we got to move beyond it, because while $1,000 is absolutely a lot of money, and I would certainly like to have $1,000, and you would certainly want to have $1,000, most of our financial issues have to do with our living expenses, not just a finite amount of dollars, right? $1,000 is arbitrary. It doesn't really mean anything. 1 month expenses means well, you can survive a whole entire month because you've got those expenses set aside. So whereas you may not have 3 months expenses set aside right now, totally understand, right? A lot of people don't. Most Americans don't. That is the ultimate goal. And when you find opportunities like maybe another stimulus payment coming to you, or maybe a tax refund coming to you, or maybe as we rebuild this economy, someone in your household is able to take on an additional income source and rebuild what was lost, to pay off some of those debts or rebuild those savings. That's what it looks like to have robust savings. Now, someone did say this earlier, so let's give them credit for it. Manageable debt. I think to be stable is to be able to handle your debt payments, right? People of all income levels and all wealth levels can get out of control as it relates to unpaid debt. So whereas I would ideally like you to not have any debt whatsoever, I'm also realistic enough to know that if you can handle your debt payments without going backwards even further, sometimes that's okay. And that happens to be okay right now. We're going to talk more about student loans as it relates to this here in a second. But student loans are a perfect example of that. The challenge with student loans, though, of course, are that when you take out all these student loans and you're trying to get your education, it's really hard to stay mindful of how those payments are going to impact you once you get out of school. And so it's one of those things that's like, well, I made that decision earlier, and that's the decision that's actually hurting me now. What can I do about it? And in fact, I actually do have a very good solution for you to think about here in a little bit. And 2 more things that bring stability right now. Long-term stability, right? It's one thing to talk about being stable right now because, well, if I'm just being honest, that's all I've thought about for the last 6 months. You know, I'm a human too. All I've thought about is being stable over the last 6 months. And I am stable, but it's still what I think about. You know, as my wife and I talk about our own household finances, and like someone mentioned in the comments, they're spending less money right now because of how our consumer habits have changed. Our consumer habits have changed. We're spending less than we have in a long time, and we're saving it because it feels good to be stable. So yes, we're all focusing on short-term stability, but the reality is, and the good work that our friend George Fraser and his team do all the time is to help you create long-term stability. I mean, see, that's the fact of the matter. I mean, for the executive directors and center directors and HR directors in our audience today, that's what people like George do, is they help people have long-term financial stability. That's what people like me do, is they help people with short-term stability and dealing and rectifying with their past and dealing with their present, right? Finally, I know I already previewed this one, smart housing. Smart housing. I have a belief, and it's anecdotal, but I've been doing this a long time. I've talked to a lot of people. I believe a lot of people really get themselves into trouble with housing. And this isn't to assign blame to the individual that is in that situation, because as you know more than anybody, sometimes there's not affordable housing in the area, right? And sometimes to feel safe and secure in a neighborhood or a community, you got to pay a little bit more. And I get that. And I also understand that it's regional, right? I'm coming to you from the Midwest, and a lot of you are over on the West Coast where it's just a little more expensive to live. I did get a question coming that says, what was the name of the webinar? Someone just asked me that question. I don't know what that means, other than to say we've had other webinars here with you. So maybe Fernando, is maybe that question you can answer in the comments or get more information on that. I don't want to leave that person hanging. Pennywise is the name of this current webinar. That's the one you're talking about. Sorry about that. Okay. Smart housing. Ideally, you're spending 40% or less on housing, 40% of your take-home pay on housing. All right. So what's keystone? Here's what I mean by keystone. What is the one thing, if you changed in your financial life, if you fixed, might be the better way to go there. If you fix this one thing in your financial life, the one right in front of you, then the rest of your financial life opens up. So I'm very curious right now, if one thing changed in your financial life, the one thing holding you back from a tremendous amount of financial progress, what is that one thing? So in the chat box right now, if you get a chance, type it in there. What's the one thing? Student loans. I feel you. I feel you, Tracy. Childcare costs. Man, we love our kids, but man, it is not fun to pay to have them taken care of. Credit cards, budgeting. You know, Michelle, budgeting you can do. Budgeting's hard, right? Budgeting's hard because it's almost like changing your eating habits. You're counting your calories. You can't eat this, you can't eat that, and it becomes very restrictive. But budgeting is something you can do. Online shopping, I feel you there. I mean, I bought this shirt online. Some of you are thinking I should ask for my money back, but online shopping just becomes a habit where you get bored, you need a hit of dopamine, you want to feel good. Nothing feels better than buying something. You hear the term retail therapy all the time, right? Retail therapy, that's a real thing. It feels good to spend money. That's why you and I do it. It's also why we search for likes on social media too, because it just feels good. Dining out, that's a habitual thing that we can change. Paying rent in Northern California. I have to say, I'm glad I've never been up against that, but I know a lot of my friends have. You're my friend too, so you have too. Uber Eats, DoorDash, all food delivery services. Hey, you know what? I like to be transparent. I used to struggle with that. And I want to tell you why I no longer struggle with that. And again, we're getting a little off track, but it's important for you to know. I want my favorite restaurants in the community in which I live to survive this horrible time we're going through. And for a long time, I thought I was really supporting them by ordering from them and then having some random person bring it to me. Not that the random person's bad. They're just doing their job and they're hustling, by the way. But what I learned is the economics of restaurants are so bad anyway, even in good times, that when you go through a third-party delivery service, up to 30% of that ticket, 30% of your food cost is going to the third-party service as opposed to the restaurant itself. So you're actually hurting the restaurant in a very strange way. So it's once I did that, I got in my car and would go pick up my carryout. I made that own personal decision. I encourage you to do the same. Bad credit. Oh man. Bad credit can hold you back, but I have to be honest. It doesn't hold you back as much as you think it does. It really doesn't. Yes, you have to pay more for insurance. Yes, you have to pay more on certain interest rates. But the reality is sometimes bad credit is just something that hangs out in your mind that doesn't really affect your day-to-day. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. So here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to take that thing you just wrote down or you typed in the box there, and I want you to become obsessed with solving that problem, because this is what this is about. if I can fix this, then that, then my stability can get going, right? I'm not saying we're here to remove excuses. We're not here to remove excuses. We're here to solve problems. And if you just identify the one thing that clears the path for your financial life to go off on the right path, then let's get after it. Think about how much you're distracted by just today. I'll be honest, I'm distracted by what's on television tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I think the whole nation's going to be distracted by that. I'm distracted by the next 4 weeks that we're all sharing together until we figure out some stuff, right? You and I both are. But you've just arguably identified the one thing that if you fix, things get better. That's powerful. I will tell you though, the way you solve that one thing is to look at your spending. Now, what's interesting is some of you said your spending is the thing, but let's look at some of your spending, especially as it relates to past decisions, what we like to call lots of little, and then your spending evolution. So let's start with past decisions. Student loans, I promise we're going to talk about it. So student loans are a sticky thing. And in the industry that you're in and the work you can do, you do actually have some options to solve your student loan problem. So if you're a center director, if you're executive director or HR person, and student loans are a big issue for your population at your organization, please talk to George, because George has access. If you're able to work with George and his people on your retirement plan, George has access to a tool that my team came up with called the Public Service Student Loan Forgiveness Calculator. We can help you determine who in your organization specifically can have their student loans forgiven. And if they're off track, if they're eligible but off track, we can get them back on track. And so if we can do this right, because we've done it for a lot of organizations like yours, we can talk about tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars of student loan debt just within your own organization being forgiven because we get you back on track. The way, again, center directors, HR folks, and even people listening, put some pressure on them. Talk to George about getting your retirement plan and letting his folks take care of it, because then you can get access to that student loan forgiveness tool. All right. Yes, public service student loan forgiveness program. What a lot of you are thinking, a lot of you should be thinking, frankly, is not many people qualify for that plan. You're right. That's why we created the tool to get people back on track to qualify. So there's this provision that if you make your student loan payments appropriately for a period of 10 years and your organization qualifies, then the balance of your plan or your student loans are forgiven. That's a thing. It exists. It is real. Most people use the plan wrong. They don't file the right paperwork. And so part of our job is to help you do that. So if your student loans are what's blocking the rest of your financial life, we can fix it. So again, talk to George and his team about that, center directors. Housing and car. Man, I regret some of my housing decisions as much as anything else in my financial life, okay? It is really frustrating to think about some of the challenges I created for myself with my housing decision. And I think the last time we did an event, I told you about a good friend of mine that finally decided to press reset on his financial life as it relates to housing. Sometimes to fix a housing problem or a transportation problem, you got to get extreme. And I'm not saying get dramatic or do something drastic. But what I am saying is sometimes changing the housing decision or changing the transportation decision going forward is the best way out. And then finally, and this is a little uncomfortable to talk about, but you and I are friends, so it's okay. People. Sometimes we were in a relationship that did not end well. Sometimes we were in a relationship where that person took advantage of us financially. Sometimes we supported an adult child too long, even though we love that child and we want the best for them. We kept the training wheels on too long, and then both you and them suffered for it. So sometimes as you look at the financial challenges in your life, you look at your financial past, it's okay to identify some of the people that created some of the challenges. Now, I'm not a blame guy. If you want to blame them, that's another thing. But you can decide who's responsible and how to fix that without getting too caught up in blame. Let's say you had a significant other that you were in a marriage with and they ruined your credit and left with you a bunch of debt. They were responsible for that problem. Now, it's still unfortunately up to you to solve, but just identifying that that's a problem is fine. If you spend too much time blaming them, though, and letting that become this burden for the rest of your financial life, that's bad. That's bad. You got to talk to someone about making sure that you can really address the problem and not spin your wheels getting caught up in the blame game. By the way, I say that respectfully, okay? I don't want that to come off as, oh, he's telling me to forget. I understand. I see this stuff all the time. And I just want you to know that let's just solve the problem, right? Because there's not a lot you can do about the blame situation. All right, another issue we see with people spending has to do with our habits. Lots of little problems. You know, if I spend $5 this morning and then $7 this afternoon and then $13 tonight, and then I do it again tomorrow and the next day and the next day, that's a lot of little, right? You're having little expenditures, little amounts of spending, and they add up really fast, and those are called habits. One of our past events we did together with George and Ed and all the folk there at Head Start, my man Fernando, is we dealt with this idea that you should count your transactions, that as a household, you should really only spend money 10 to 14 times a month. And if you're spending more than that, by the way, 10 to 14 a month, that's ridiculous. 10 to 14 a week, 10 to 14 transactions per week. If you're spending money more frequently than that, it can be a sign that you've got a lots of little problem and you need to reduce the number of transactions. Finally, evolve or repeat. And this is really where this all comes to a head today. You guys, most Americans aren't stable right now. They just aren't. You know that. You know that. Whether you're looking in the mirror, you're looking at the house next to you, or you're looking at the people you serve on a regular basis, you know people aren't stable. And I don't say that judgmentally, I just say it observationally. And by the way, whether people are financially stable or emotionally stable or spiritually stable, mentally stable, like there's a lot of forms of stability. Yes, you and I are talking about money today, but the reality is it's okay to check in on all of those different areas of your life and to understand that we have to evolve in those different areas, or we're going to repeat the reality of which is bringing us pain right now. So if you're not feeling as stable as you want to be, and you're willing to evolve, you're willing to grow, let's get after it, right? And the way you do that is to get everyone involved in your financial life together to talk about this. As I've mentioned to you before, don't call the meeting tonight. Give the person a few days to get their head around that you're going to have the meeting. Tell them you want to have the meeting in a few days. Let them think about it and just discuss this event. You're going to get a recording of this event. Just watch it with them. You can make fun of my shirt together, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay. Watch them with them. Understand what their strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. What's the one thing that they would change in your collective financial life to create a path forward? And by the way, since you've already seen this, let them answer first. Don't taint them with your answers. In fact, best thing to do is to each have a piece of paper and a pen and write down your thoughts independently, and then share them with each other. That's the way forward. Because when everything's chaotic, all you got to do, and I make it sound easy, it's not. What you need to do is you need to identify the real problem that's holding you back. And when there's so much chaos that our financial lives seem like the one thing we can't do anything about, in fact, it is the one thing we can do something about with some diligence. So that's your homework. Have a meeting. If you don't have a significant other you share your finances with, good, they're paying. No, I'm just kidding. Find an accountability partner. Find another friend of yours who doesn't have that element in their life as well. A family member, a friend, anybody who just needs accountability. Because one, this is about outwardly acknowledging the challenges you have. Sometimes when you say them, they're easier to deal with at that point. And the other element that is really important here is the accountability. To check back in next month. I don't want to end on a down note here, but I think right now what is currently going on whatever day this is, what day are we on? September 29th. Yeah, we made it to September 29th. I have to admit, I think we're actually in a pretty decent spot right now. Now, if you hear that and you think, well, I'm not in a decent spot, what I'm saying is I think the next few months, the next 2-3 months are going to be really, really, really challenging. With just the fever pitch of our country and the economy. The stock market, I don't concern myself too much with, right? It's the future. But I think we're going to get to a fever pitch again, right? And so what I'm saying is you got to constantly check in on this stuff. If you need help, turn to George and his team. Man, they're good. So turn to George and his team. And again, if you're a center director and you want to dig in deeper in this and you want access to my team of professional financial problem solvers, the way you get to them is by talking to George and having him talk to you about your retirement plan. So if you have any additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them now. Where can we access this webinar to watch it at a later time? Does anyone know the answer to that question? Maybe it'll be emailed to you. I think, oh, Ed, do you know the answer to that question?
Yep, we're going to have it put up on our website. It will be linked to the event, and we'll send that out as a notice to folks where they can get a copy to this. It'll eventually end up on our YouTube channel as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, be sure to leave lots of positive comments. Just kidding. Hey, Ed, thank you so much for having me. And George, I always love working with you as well. So who am I going to toss it back to? Ed, George, why don't you guys save me from floundering here?
I'm gonna take it first, Pete. First, thank you. I love the thoughts about accountability in particular. I think, that's one of the things we can do is hold ourselves accountable, whether it's financial or it's just dealing with the stressors that are ahead the next few months. So I appreciate those reminders and always learn something each and every time we have these webinars. I also just wanted to make sure before we wrap up, my appreciation to George, as well as to Mitch Haber, who's not on the camera here. For those of you who are listening in, the reason we started this was George's insistence as we move forward in doing the scholarship program that we do each spring with OneAmerica, Nuveen, and the Retirement Benefits Group, is that we be sure that we not only offer a path toward supporting higher education, but also really support you as individuals moving forward in your everyday lives. So George, thank you for being so thoughtful about this community. I know you're working with a number of agencies now, providing them with direct support and direct services, and I know you're open to questions from others. So thanks to you, thanks to Nuveen and to OneAmerica for your ongoing support. But let me have you wrap it up, George, with a few thoughts about retirement as we kind of head to the fourth quarter of the year. Folks might be actually thinking about that and considering their own options.
Sure. Well, and thanks to you, Ed. What leadership Region 9 has, and just as a heads up, the work that we've been doing at Region 9 is something that Ed has helped us to encourage other advisors like me to do in other parts of the country. So Head Start is being recognized within my industry just at a different level altogether. And I'm the first to share with you, 3 years ago, I didn't know what Head Start was. I'm embarrassed by that. And now not only do I know, but I have become I'll call myself a missionary for Head Start. This is one of the most amazing organizations that I have ever had the pleasure of working with, and I am so proud to be part of it. So, getting ready for retirement. One other comment, I think, first of all, Pete, that was great. I loved your student loan forgiveness program, and we're happy to help with that at any time. I think that's absolutely amazing. But I think we need to be hopeful about retirement as well. And it's a really important part of what we talk to participants and team members about when we get to spend time with you. And so Social Security is one of those things. Hey, I just shared with you that just about everybody has $250,000 in income between 65 and 85. That's something you might not have realized you had. You feel a little bit better when you hear that you have it, correct? I've got another one for you. All these brochures that you see on retirement show people in fancy cars and in beautiful golf courses and in fancy boats. For many of us, that sounds like those are things that may not be able to accomplish. We've actually got some really cool retirement hacks that we talk about when we're with team members at Head Start and other organizations that help people be able to be engaged in those things. I'd love to think that folks can spend a couple of weeks at a beach in Sarasota. You might not think you're able to do it. Log on to www.catsitters.com. There are people in Sarasota who want you to look after their cat and to stay in their beautiful place on the beach. Or how about I can't afford all the costs of my car. Well, do you know what? You can sign on to an Uber program and go have a little extra work in retirement, maybe drive 2 days a week, pay the cost of your car. That's pretty cool. Or we have another client who has trouble with their mortgage. Well, they've set up part of their house as an Airbnb, and currently today they cover 75% of their mortgage with that. one last example. I have another couple. This gal wants her husband out of the house. She's tired of having him in the house. Go get some exercise. He's gone out and he takes a couple of days a week throwing bags at Delta Airlines. They love to travel. He gets exercise. She doesn't have to see him every day of the week. And guess what? They travel free, first class all around the world on Delta Airlines. We don't think about things like that. We're here to help you understand that retirement can be really special above and beyond what you save in your 403B or your 401k. We'd love to work with each and every one of you. Reach out to your executive directors and HR directors and let them know that we are available to come help your Head Start program in Region 9. Thanks, Ed. It's great being with you and Pete and Mitch, of course, and always our thanks out to Nuveen as a sponsor.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, George. Thanks, Pete, for your time. And Fernando, I think we're all finished. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.